on. So what I found in the cross-cultural study was exactly what I was finding in my ethnographic research. So to respond to Marty White, I would say the ethnographic research really supports this, was highly representative, as you just didn't get the rich nuance that you would get over a long time. So let's end on that note here, take questions, but I end with a puzzle. 51% of people under 30 in America, and maybe Western Europe as well, say they believe in polyamor. Okay. Now, polyamor strikes me as incredibly fashionable, and it's an interesting sociological question on why 51% want to polyamor. Polyamor is, I have a lot of love to give, why should I restrict myself just to one? Which sounds a lot like the Herod experiment of the 1960s and 70s when I was an undergraduate, and we were all like reading books on why males were passing around books telling their girlfriend, wouldn't it be great to be three in the bed? Polyamor really strikes me as among that line, but the research on polyamor is mostly self-advocate. And even there, we begin to see primary and secondary distinctions, if you will. Okay, if I am right, polyamor will be fashionable, and it will not sustain itself after 10 years or so. It won't be multi-generational. If I'm wrong, it should sustain itself and continue through the generations. Otherwise, it'll just be another American communal experiment with living. Okay, so this ends the last point. The data around the world is really strong. Human beings as a species, is not sexually monogamous. But as a species, we are emotionally monogamous. It is very, very difficult to love passionately two people at the same time. And those people who have done that, and I did research on this, think it was the worst time of their life. So thank you for listening, and I'll take questions. Yes.
I understand that there have been a number of utopian communities which have tried this communal thing, including kibbutz, and that most of them have failed after one generation. So I was wondering, why has the Mormons been successful for 5 generations when so many others?
You know, that's a great question in terms of comparing of that. We do know that religiously grounded communes last anywhere from 10 to 15 years, much longer than secular. So the religion sustains it, but this is talking about 100 years.
Yeah.
My hunch, okay, because it was so closed and constantly being threatened by outside, children were raised to call their father uncle because they didn't want to call him dad because that would make him liable to being arrested. The polygamous identity becomes part of a social identity, and where women who don't like living it sustain it because it's part of their belief. As one woman said, I believe in polygamy, I just don't want to share my wife with anyone. And 15 years later, her husband was given a new wife who she drove out of the house with a butcher knife. Okay, so, but again, notice her point. I believe in it, but it doesn't do it. The belief is this is part of my sense of identification and protecting the community. So in some sense, the external threat heighten a kind of identity. And then you also have the religious belief coming in too to sustain it. Now, it's very interesting because the states of Arizona and Utah have argued that they're not going to prosecute polygamy, only if it's underage or if there's sexual abuse. But other than that, what was a public secret now is just accepted. And so it remains to be seen, given the absence of external threat, will you see the younger generation begin to leave in a much faster way of moving it. So that's something to watch out for. Yes. Well, I can also repeat the question.
Okay, well, it's a bit long.
Oh, well, that
That was very interesting. Thank you. I'm particularly interested. So I've got two young, children, men now, 18 and 20, and they have a tendency, whenever I say certain things, to do the boomer thing, even though I'm not that generation. So okay, boomer. And so I'm interested in that younger generation and the extent to which they question and challenge their parents as boomers, as part of a sort of generational out of date group of people. And the other sort of related to that is, could you tell us a bit more about the resources of the Mormons and the extent to which some of this maneuvering is around actually trying to control access to inheritance and those kinds of resources, which if it's a group of men who are controlling a set of resources and anybody who doesn't fit is pushed out, then they maintain access to those to the money, basically. And to what extent do you think that's impacted in the dynamics of the society?
Good, terrific questions. I can't help you with your kids and the boomers. I'm not quite sure what they're objecting to, in the sense that my daughter just says, it's same thing. It's part of like the teen. Anyways, we don't have to go there.
Yeah, we can talk about
they.
It's more what the Mormon kids are saying to their parents.
A lot of the kids want to leave, even if they got a wife. They're really angry. They're angry at the father. They're angry at the control. They really would want to have a different life, if you will, especially in the larger ones, the larger families. There is a lot of them meet at night, which goes against the church and family teaching. They sneak out of the house and they have meetings together and whatever. The rumor is it's highly sexual. I asked two people who went to a lot of those meetings. They said maybe two people that was sexual, but the rest of it was just drinking. The community does do alcohol and coffee, and this is a direct in opposition to the Church of Latter-day Saints position. And as I asked this one man, I said, I thought you were an Orthodox Mormon. Why are you drinking coffee? And he opens up the Book of Pearl or whatever, and he says, read this, and it says, thou shalt not have strong stimulus drink. And he says, where does it say you shouldn't drink coffee? So, okay, anyways, but I have a whole chapter on the struggle of kids to move in, to be there, to where they are. Elite kids act very cocky because they know their father's going to protect them. The weaker ones do not. There are about 7, 8 different Mormon communities, and in time they've evolved differently. The one you're talking about really controlled all the property. It was the Warren Jeff community. That was not, I knew about them, but that's not the primary one of my research. And they were able to kick people out because they owned the property and they urged people to give it. The community I was in did not believe in that. In fact, they were driven out of that community in a way. And each person owned their own home. So they did not have that. The homes now go for about $600,000, and it's become kind of a prosperous. As the Southwest has grown economically, people have their own construction business and whatever, and they're very prosperous on that. They do believe in the tithing, but that's all. It's just 10%, which really follows the Mormon tradition, if you will. So the group I studied was the most liberal, the most open, makes sense that why that would be the group that would accept an outsider to live among them. Why Warren Jeffs really went the other way, was the most closed, most out of that, and the most insane. He was actually highly mentally ill, doing stuff that really raised questions to even the people who practiced it.
So can women inherit?
Yes.
Okay.
Generally, what it is generally your first wife is a legal wife, but they make a will. And you can either distribute it to everyone or focus on one. Which is a good question, and thank you for that. I did not really focus on will because when I was there, this community had just started in its breakaway, and the property issue was not there. But I did know two families where the favorite wife was left the majority. So you begin to shift his alliance and also the kids out of that.
Thank you very much. Very enlightening, having lived for a number of years in Muslim countries where, of course, polygamy is legal. Simple arithmetic prompts a question: what do the men do who do not find a wife?
They leave the community and they go find a wife in the outside world. They don't have a stigma because they were raised in a polygamous community. Outside women just want to know where's your heart now, and a lot of them leave with anger and they reject the religion and adopt a different religion, if you will, because as far as they're concerned, their religion failed them. Well, this would be when you're a small community of 6,000 people, and most of them are young kids. You can easily just move into the larger city, and that's the great thing about, as Weber pointed out a long time ago, cities create freedom.
Thank you for this very fascinating talk. A question concerning jealousy. You have mentioned the fact that children are, so to say, trained to anticipate that they will have to deal with jealousy. But after that, when you came to the adult life, you more mentioned the fact that people are emotionally strained. But you did not really discuss again this. I would like to know if you can tell a bit more about how people deal with these jealousy feelings, and as well in respect to the relation between the children and the father. I heard from friends coming from polygamous communities in Africa that there were a lot of tensions and competitions between the children for the love of the father, but that sometimes it's also led to sort of hate relationship with the father, because obviously he could not fulfill everyone's expectations. So wanted to know if you can say something about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jealousy, it runs through the whole community and really articulated in the co-wives. The co-wives, by the way, do not really form a great union. Their cooperation is much more instrumental, much more, we'd call it transactional. Though in the large families, you do seem to find a dyadic friendship that is formed, which is very interesting. It's not a triad or a quadrad. It's just the one woman will find help with another woman. When I went to everyone's room of a polygamous wife, on the wall would be a picture of them with their husband and their offspring, but never, ever of any of their sister wives, okay? And in fact, I was talking to one woman and I used the anthropological term co-wife, and she says, "What's that? I never heard that." And she says, "I like that so much better than sister wife. I hate my sister wife." Okay. And as another woman said to me, he says, "I was walking with my husband and his wife down the road, and I put my arm around him and I touched her arm and she pulled it away. And from that moment on, I knew this marriage would have problems." Okay. So, and then people, they would always talk, always spending more time with her. And as one woman said to me, when I realize he's touching me when they're having sex, and I realize everything he's doing to me, he's done with everyone else, I feel just horrible. Okay. last point real quick, father. I have a thing called father adoration, which is fascinating. The communion's run by a love of the father. It's an idealization of the lover, but it's not in an erotic context, so it's not passionate love, but it's an idealized love. And I would ask people, I says, were you close to your father? No. But what do you, but you're going to make a memorial of him. Oh yeah, and we're going to make a memorial. We're going to tell him, we're going to celebrate what he did in the community. We do all this stuff. And I go, but you didn't really like him. No, didn't like him. Okay, so you have here, and it makes sense in a plural love family, the father does it, the father becomes crystallized. To be called a patriarch in the community is a compliment. It's not like in the West we call it a slur. There, it's a compliment. So it makes sense you'd have father adoration would be part of holding the whole thing together, if you will. But they don't develop. As one man said to me, I had a father relationship with I had a father-like relationship with my father. He wasn't my dad. Okay. Now, coming from our cultural background, we want daddy relationship, and if we don't see daddy relationship, we figure there's I'm speaking Chinese. There's a contradiction. Okay, but in their view, no. Yes. Thank you. Right.